Perhaps one of the most revolutionary texts in that regard comes from someone that we have pretty much silenced in the church, which is Jesus' mother, Mary. Remember Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ? There was a lot wrong with that movie, but the thing that never got talked about is Mary's role. I mean, Mary was a typical mother, female, always very sad, very passionate, crying, passive, just looking on, not knowing what to do. Why this is so horrible, depressed. Which is not at all the Mary that you find in the Gospels. The typical female role that gets projected onto Mel Gibson's Mary and onto most of the Marys in the churches. She's always the passive one, always the one that holds up the boy. Of course, she can't do anything. She's just a mother in the background. What Mary says in the Gospel of Luke, you all know it, but let me remind you, chapter 1, starting on verse 46, Mary's song of praise. Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant." That's all beautiful. "Surely from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Mercies for those who fear him from generation to generation." But now hear this. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. There's this pairing of two perspectives. One of which we usually hear about in church. God lifts up the lowly, raises them up. He looks at Mary with favor, raises her up. He helps those who can't help themselves, or stuff like that. He feeds the hungry, which is what we do in the church. More and more, hopefully, so. I think that's becoming more fashionable now, as churches don't quite know what else to do anymore. So we'll feed the hungry now. Which is all stuff that you can do without getting in trouble. Which is all stuff that my students can talk about without getting in trouble. And you preach a wonderful sermon about, verse 53a. He has filled the hungry with good things. That's a wonderful Sunday morning sermon and a wonderful Bible study. Just don't preach about 53b, which reads, I need my glasses. And send the rich away empty. Don't preach about 53. Fill the hungry with good things and send the rich away empty. What you're finding here is not just, we're building a little harmless alternative on the side while the big guns, keep playing their games, while the economy keeps rolling, while big religion keeps rolling and doing their own thing. We'll do the harmless stuff here, and we'll go to the homeless shelter, and please go, keep doing that. What we're talking about is a clash here. By filling the hungry with good things, by lifting up the lowly, you have the other reaction that ultimately the top-down perspective gets challenged. That is the thing that gets people really nervous. And if I talk like that in lectures or in church without bringing this book with me, the Holy Bible, they'll just think I'm crazy. It happens to me a lot. Students think that's the way Rieger talks. Rieger talks always. He's such a radical. He makes this stuff up, and everybody gets real upset about. How can we be so inflammatory? Our development people do not like this. I'm not sure my dean likes it. Can you cut that off from there? But let's face it. I'm not making these things up. This is part of our Christian heritage, whether we like it or not. So the alternative that develops here is not simply, say, well, let's forget about blind faith and we'll do a better job. It's actually an alternative that goes right into the face of blind faith and calls the challenge. Now, what do we do with that sort of a challenge? And what happens to the rich that then gets sent away empty? Isn't that kind of cold, uncaring? Doesn't Jesus, or Mary for that matter, have compassion with the rich? What about me, right? I mean, I'm not poor. Well, it may well be, that this is the sort of wake-up call that we need. It may well be that being sent away empty every now and then, perhaps on a Sunday morning, we've come here to lean back and to be patted on the back again and again and again. This morning, I'll send you away empty. So you think about what's really going on. It might be healthy. It might actually be a sort of compassion that goes deeper, that really cares for the life and the survival of these people, of rich people. I mean, it's one thing, telling people what they want to hear. But is that really compassion? Is that really caring? Or is that simply telling people what they want to hear because then you're going to reap the benefit? Something good will come back to you, right? That's probably more like it. So maybe having the guts, pushing the powerful from their throne every now and then, sending the rich away empty, might be a good thing for everybody. It sure gets pressure off some people's backs, but it might also help some people to see that the way they live their own lives might not be the way life really is meant to be lived, the way humanity really is meant to shape up. So, having brought the conflict right before you, these are some, I think, of the heaviest conflicts here. The question is, how do we proceed from here? What about this bottom-up perspective? It seems to me this is where Jesus develops a lot of his energies. This is where he develops a lot of his insights. In the book, I'm actually rereading some of the gospel narratives that really show you that if you think from the bottom up, this actually makes a difference. This is the sort of thing that you didn't quite, we're not perhaps able to see from the top. I'll give you just one example. The story of the unforgiving servant. Right, there's this guy who receives forgiveness from his master, and then he steps out and has his fellow servant put in prison because he can't repay his debt. And we usually, thinking from the top down, we think of this as a moral admonition. You ought to be nice to other people. You ought to be nice to you, you ought to be nice too, even though it makes no sense. It really doesn't. If you're looking at this from the perspective of the banks, it really doesn't make any sense. If you receive a bailout, as happened not long ago, I hope you remember it, if you, as a financial institution, receive a bailout, it makes no financial sense to pass that on to your customers. And so maybe you read this story about the unforgiving servant and say, you ought to be a little bit more compassionate. From the top, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but read it the other way around. From the perspective of the worker, what does it look like? Somebody who works for a living, what is the wealth that you have? Well, part of the wealth that you have is solidarity with other people who work for a living. What makes you strong ultimately is not your finances or the sort of stuff that the powerful and the wealthy can rely on. What makes you strong is your community connections, is your solidarity, is the fact that there are other people like you with whom you can work together. Now, why would you destroy that bond by having somebody put in jail who owes you a certain debt that may not be that significant? I mean, it's self-destructive behavior that this unforgiving servant engages in because he's not really clear about what really serves his interest. He thinks, well, he has to put his fellow servant in jail, which is what destroys his community, which is what destroys his real wealth. So it's not that he makes a moral mistake, he's just dumb. I mean, he makes a real life mistake, cutting off the ties that he really needs, that really make him blossom and make him live a better life.